Welcome to Nature's Edge for your news from where nature and human nature meet, from climate and environment to animal intelligence, human psychology, and all the economies of life. Coming to you today from Central Park, where it's drop-dead gorgeous, hardly a cloud in the sky, the air is fresh, folks are enjoying lying out on the grass, and our special guest today is Robert Haas. Bobby, thanks for talking to Nature's Edge.
My pleasure, Bill.
Robert Haas has traveled around the world taking aerial photographs of a lot more than wildlife. His photographs have a remarkable ability to give perspective to our situation as a species on this planet. They even manage something remarkable. They give you a sense of how planet Earth might look to aliens just arriving here for the first time if they were hovering over different areas of the Arctic. His book is called Through the Eyes of the Vikings, an Aerial Vision of Arctic Lands, published by National Geographic. And as always, we'll have our trip up the viewer question, answered by the end of the show. What is a pingo? Hint, they're found especially up in the Arctic, and the pingo is not an animal. What is a pingo? Now, Robert Haas and his photographs. So when you got out of law school, you didn't know you were going to be a photographer.
No, I did not. I didn't own a camera until 1994. And then in 2002, I took my first aerial trip. I was just totally blown away by seeing the world through the eyes of the gods. And I think one of the nice things about aerial photography is, unlike ground photography, there are very few lunatics like me that are doing it. So you're not hemmed in by somebody else's style. You're not trying to imitate an Ansel Adams. You're not trying to imitate others. You can really forge new ground. Hopefully my pictures have something to do with perspective. What is it about the earth that we inhabit that is either beautiful or magnificent or at risk?
Why don't we sit on this rock and take a look?
Sounds good.
I've got a bone to pick with you about the title, Through the Eyes of the Vikings. I wasn't aware that the Vikings had airplanes.
They had very few. Their Air Force was very limited. I think it was through the eyes of the Vikings not in a literal sense, obviously, but I think in a thematic sense, the sense that we were exploring new turf just like the Vikings were exploring new turf. And also the Vikings were coming across lands for the very first time, and as an aerial photographer, I was trying to capture things that had never been captured before from the air. And it just felt to me like we were in Viking territory. We covered 7 countries, 14 time zones, and we retraced the steps of the Vikings all the way from Scandinavia to North America.
Wow, 7 countries. I believe there are 8 nations within the Arctic Circle.
Right.
So you went to all of them except
Russia. I think that what we learn when we take any aerial photography, but particularly in the Arctic, that man is not the whole story. We have a tendency in our day-to-day life of coming into contact with human beings all day long, and we think we control all of the planet, and we just don't. Man is more of a footnote in the Arctic. We're like the first few snowflakes of a November squall in terms of man being in the Arctic, and we hit the ground, but we usually disappear. And man would hit the ground in the Arctic and then usually disappear, and only a few were left.
Well, let's take a look.
One of the advantages of aerial photography, the sun is like a huge spotlight or a flashlight, and it really accents colors, particularly underwater. And this is in very shallow water, so you can see the colors. If you were down on the ground, you would not see the same colors.
Wow, interesting. Oh, what is this?
This was actually taken very near the Arctic Circle in Alaska, and what it is, it's a dry lake bed. This is smoke that's coming in from a forest fire, and the lake bed would dry up over time, and as it dried up, it would make these concentric circles. So we have, in a single snapshot, a view of history in the Arctic, and we have something that is taking place contemporaneously, and that is a forest fire. We tried to recognize the fact that we were in a hostile climate, and that meant we would go up in the air during storms like this. All we needed was just a little shaft of sunlight coming through. We got that in the background here, and you can see along the Great Bear River there was a huge storm, but we walked away with a picture.
one of the feelings that I first had, people always talk about when they first go to the Arctic,
Right.
is vast.
Yes.
Whatever the adjective vast means, that's it. And this was the first picture that I looked at that suddenly reminded me of vast.
That's absolutely true, and it's also vast in another way, and that is when you take a picture of a human being from the air, particularly in the Arctic, if you want to put the perspective in, the human being is very, very small in the picture. So it's not like taking a picture of a tribe in Africa where you may zero in on the entire group of people or a large crowd in New York City. Human beings are very sparse up here. It gives you a sense that this part of the world is very primeval. It's very similar to what it was hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of years ago. We all know that there is an actuality of global warming, and I want to depict not a position on that. I want to depict something that says this region's important to us for two reasons. Number one, because it may pose a risk to our existence. Number two, it's beautiful in its own right. I think we're in the midst of a real confrontation between our human nature and the home that we live in. And the only way we're going to win that battle is if we recognize that it's our only home, that national borders don't mean anything when it comes to destroying our planet or risking our planet. And the Arctic gives you a real sense of that. If you do subscribe to the belief that we are in a process of climate change, the planet as we know it is at risk.
That our civilization is based on.
That's correct.
Agriculture and all.
That's right.
What else did you find?
We found a lot. We found,
Wow.
again, another abstract pattern. What this is actually man-made, but it certainly doesn't look...
No, excuse me, this is a hoax. This is a painting by Jackson Pollock.
That's exactly right, but we got the copyright rights too.
What is this?
What this is...
Because
this
I
is
looked at this, I thought Jackson Pollock.
This is a pond in Sweden, and it's melting. And what you see is the pathways here. The black lines are where the melt is taking place.
On a pond.
And this is a pond, and the white tracks are snowmobile tracks. So as it melts, the black lines intersect with the white lines.
And override the white lines.
Exactly.
As if a god like Jackson Pollock had dripped his paint across the man-made.
It does look like an artist rendition. I thought this looked like spectacles up here, even with the temple curling around.
And the black is black because it's what is it? It's water that's melting out on
Yes,
top of where
you
the
can
snow was.
You can see that right here, where the ice is breaking up.
On the surface of a pond.
Exactly.
We'll be right back and see more of these space visitors' views of this strange and sturdy little planet. Back in a moment.